I'm opening the Council Bluffs Board of Directors public hearing on the Thomas Jefferson High School C-Wing stabilization plans and specifications. Please let the record show that all board members are present for the hearing. The Council Bluffs Community School District is holding a public hearing on the Thomas Jefferson High School C-Wing stabilization plans and specifications.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. At this time, I'm going to invite Mr. Stile to the podium. He will present. Mr. Stiles, do you have someone with you tonight for the presentation? Great. The floor is yours.
So it is my pleasure to introduce Greg Steeren from BCDM Architect to talk about the TJ stabilization plan. Greg.
And to all our speakers tonight, please make sure you're speaking right into the microphone so those at home can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for having me here tonight. I was here in about, I think, June 27th, speaking to a few of you on the Longfellow Elementary School had a similar condition to this, where there's been some drying out of the soil underneath the portions of the building. The Longfellow project had been probably about a 10 years worth of that occurring, whereas what we're going to talk about here tonight at TJ is in a portion of the building that was built in 1984. So the really the west portion of the building, there's 3 classrooms that are affected, as well as kind of the entries at 2 locations, really exits at those 2 locations. On the exterior, how that's manifesting, you're starting to see some cracking in the brick, a little bit of settlement at the sidewalk coming directly out of the building, where that's a little bit unusual, as those are poured deeper and have footings right by the doors so that they don't heave with freeze and thaw. Where you're seeing that door there's also kind of a little bit of settlement there, where when you're on the inside of the building, you can see daylight at the top of that door because it's settled about an inch at that location. As we move to the interior, you're starting to see there's been some cosmetic fixes in the past with resealing some joints, putting some metal panels over some CMU that's starting to come apart, concrete block, and really what we would plan to do to address this is similar to what we had talked about at Longfellow Elementary, where you lift that concrete slab by drilling holes and putting a foam product that lifts the slab itself. For the footings on the exterior of the building, we put what's called helical piers, and those drill down into the soil down to a point where there's enough resistance that lifts that exterior footing, and then that should be pretty much a permanent fix at that point. So that's really what we're showing at Longfellow. Because this has been occurring a little bit longer here at Thomas Jefferson, there's a few more things that we would need to address. There is one kind of concrete block wall location that would need to be taken down and built back up. That's not a load-bearing condition. That's just because that portion is starting to come apart. And then, as I mentioned, that sidewalk right outside of the doors, both locations coming out of that west wing would need to be replaced and have the soil backfilled underneath that as well. And then it's called brick tuck pointing when you fix the joints on the exterior of the building. So as we're seeing that kind of come apart on the exterior, it's really a fix of the joints in that brick masonry. There's a little bit of that on the interior as well, honestly, as you come right inside of the door, because that brick is visually, or it's visible on the interior as well. I think some of those photos showed a little bit of, there's some cosmetic issues with the drywall bulkheads as things shift as well. So really kind of getting down to what might that cost. We've done a cost estimate here, and that's looking to be probably a little bit north of $200,000 at Thomas Jefferson, putting that at about $124 a square foot. Now, that does include a 15% contingency. When I came and talked about Longfellow, that was a little less than 100,000 at a little bit less of a square footage or cost per square foot. Again, here, there's a little bit larger area that we're talking about and a little bit more robust work as well. But we are looking to then put these together, and we can bid them together to hopefully get a little bit of economy of scale and reduce that price point. So.
Yeah, I've got a question. When I look at the areas of work that are listed, I think about 10 years ago or so, we had similar situation going on at TJ. I remember a civil engineer coming in and talking about how they noticed cracking in the building, and we put strain gauges across the cracks and determined that, yeah, it's pretty critical here that we need to address the issue. So did we just have a dramatic change in the soil conditions from the time we had to work 10 years ago or so? I mean, I think it was about that time.
Yep, absolutely. So when we did do our field work and observed that we took the ceiling tile out and looked above, and we could see that those gauges were still there. So that has moved more over time, yes.
Okay. Obviously, what we did before may have helped.
I
It
think
didn't really
I think
take
it bought
care
you
of-
time,
Right.
but it's definitely something that would need to be addressed, yeah.
I was wondering, how long will the helical piers and the polyfill concrete slab, how long will that last?
That really should be basically a permanent fix at that point, yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. That concludes our public hearing.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments about the Thomas Jefferson High School C-Wing stabilization plans and specifications? Singers is none. Thank you for this public hearing. We're going to go ahead and close. I now call to order the regular workshop business meeting of the Council Bluffs Community School District. Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yeah.
Mr. Peters?
Here.
Mr. Kozier?
Present.
Ms. Myers?
Here.
Ms. Greiner?
Present?
Dr. Ozello?
Here.
Mr. Tripp?
Here. If you would, all please rise. Join me in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval of our agenda as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Patrick. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the minutes from the work session, workshop, business meeting, and organizational meeting of November 14th, 2023. Can I get a motion?
I can move for the approval of the minutes from the work session of November 14th, 2023 to be approved as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing there is none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. This brings us to the public participation portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board regarding agenda items or other matters of concern. I have two people that have requested time, so we will go ahead and start off with Lacey. regarding Wilson Middle School. Go ahead and please come up, state your name and address, and you'll get 5 minutes. Lacey, are you here? Okay, moving on. Next up, we have Sherry Anderson, discussing some ideas about improving our district around teacher planning time and challenges due to student behavior. Lacey, the podium is yours. Oh, Sherry, I'm sorry.
Hi, Sherry. Hi. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Sherry Anderson. I teach sixth grade social studies at Kern Middle School. I have more than 25 years' experience in Council Bluffs, and I am a member of the Council Bluffs Education Organization, which is the teacher union. I'm a past president, and I'm currently serving as grievance chair for secondary, and I'm a building rep at Kern. So welcome new board members, and I hope you and the veteran members have a satisfying time working on the Council Bluffs Community School District School Board. I know that you are going to find that we have an abundance of excellent, dedicated teachers and staff in Council Bluffs. Our district is filled with instructional talent, and we work together to help our students become productive, responsible citizens. We know our district has much to offer around educational opportunities for success, and we're constantly striving to improve. We know that's why you wanted to serve as school board members, because you're dedicated to the improvement of Council Bluffs Community School District, and that's what we want. So around that, I would like to just briefly, well, I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to briefly discuss 2 topics. First, teacher plan time. I am sure that you all understand that in order to teach engaging lessons, teachers need time to plan, and some of that time is embedded in the school day, but not enough. Teachers find that to be prepared and comfortable teaching, they need to be at school early or stay late or both. Prepared teachers means relaxed, confident, comfortable teachers, able and ready to give their best. And there are times in the school day when teachers are not face-to-face with students, but that time is reserved for meetings, such as student support meetings, team meetings, PLCs, D+1, IEPs, lots of meetings. And I'm not talking about state-mandated professional development, because according to Section 384.6 of the Iowa Code, school districts are required to have 36 hours of professional development. Currently, our district surpasses that by 4 hours from the Monday early outs. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the other district mandated meetings that often those meetings don't help teachers prepare to teach the next day or the next hour. So while the meetings are important, teachers are telling me that they would use that time differently and more productively if they had the professional freedom to do so. So I have an idea that I think might help around this. What if we tried an experiment? What if for 2 weeks there were no meetings? What if every moment a teacher is not in front of students, that teacher determines how to use their time? For 2 weeks, the teachers have no other issues, no other tasks than to plan, grade, and teach, which is already a lot. So after those 2 weeks, what if we get feedback? What if we ask, how'd it go? How do you feel? Were you more prepared, relaxed, confident? If so, maybe some of those meetings can happen monthly or quarterly instead of weekly. And those decisions should probably be made with the input of the teachers. So maybe the teachers decide they do need student support every week, but PLCs every 3 weeks. I say we give it a try. As a way to improve plan time for teachers, which will lead to more engaging lessons and comfortable, confident teachers and improve our district. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is student behavior improvements. Everyone knows we have great students in Council Bluffs. Most of the kids are mostly good most of the time. Yet there is room for there is room for improvement, striving to be the best that we can be. So we have systems in place right now to deal with behaviors. We have positive supports, trauma-informed protocols, restorative practices, and they are all successful to a certain extent. And we should not get rid of any of those. But to improve the teaching and learning conditions for everybody, we need to add another support. We need a predictable, reasonable, motivational, consistent consequence, and one that is designed to prevent, deter, or change bad behavior.
Ms. Anderson, that's your time, if you want to reply.
Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope that you will come visit me in Kern, room B110.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to come up and speak? Seeing none, that concludes public part. Oh, John, okay, there is one more. It looks like we have Chris Reiser regarding the TJ structural repair. Chris, go ahead and come up. The podium is yours. You do have 3 minutes.
This won't take 3 minutes, but I really am kind of drawn to add one small drop of common sense, maybe that should be brought up for the TJ structural repairs. Number one, the historic footprint of the TJ building is very important to our community. It is a stronghold, really, of the city of Council Bluffs as well as the educational institutions. I think the building is in excellent condition, and it's one we definitely want to preserve. The only thing that concerns me, or, is probably hiding in the background of this, and they were talking about the structural concerns. I will admit I am not an engineer. I am an educator, but my son is an engineer, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because I'm an educator. But when you put a train a number of feet in the backyard of a historic building, and I'm talking about this Omaha streetcar that was brought up the last time about the city wanting to run the streetcar, i.e. train, in the backyard of TJ. That's not really good for the structure of a historical building that we want to maintain and preserve, hopefully for another 100 years. So my reflection says a knee-jerk reaction to okay the train going in the backyard of TJ High School, and we all know where we're talking about too, needs further consideration and serious consideration. I know it was quickly okayed the last time I was at the meeting, and I think there needs to be a little further introspection about that, but I would say definitely put the money into preserving, maintaining TJ. It's really in good condition to be in there, actually, but my concern is running a train in the backyard, and we know where that is, of TJ, and the structure. It does affect a building. Everybody knows that buildings along the train tracks have structural problems sooner or later. So I would say my concern about that is putting a streetcar, i.e. Omaha streetcar, running through the back of TJ.
Thank you. That concludes our public participation portion of the meeting, and that brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp. At this time, I'd like to invite, are we doing, this is our student and staff recognition. So at this time, I'm going to invite Ms. Comine. We have a little bit of a change for new board members. Where Diane is sitting, Ms. Ostrowski is usually our CFO. And so Ms. Ostrowski usually runs our student and staff recognitions. And since she's assumed the seat that Mr. Wilson is in, Ms. Comine and Mr. Schultz is sharing the student recognition, and Mr. Milborn is now doing our employee recognition. So, Ms. Comine, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and Dr. Murillo, I would like to invite you to join us. We have some very, very talented students with us tonight that will receive their stars for our Student Spotlight.
You bet.
All right, so we have 3 different sections we're going to honor tonight. Our first one is to honor and recognize Abraham Lincoln High School volleyball player Molly Romano. Molly is a 5A first team All-State volleyball player for 2023. Molly has been a starting setter for AL varsity volleyball for all 4 years of her high school career. She set a school record with 3,380 set assists in her high school career. And Molly is also graduating early at the end of this first semester so she can enroll and begin practicing at Division II Wayne State College this spring. And so congratulations, Molly, and great luck to you in the future. Next, we are honoring and recognizing our Abraham Lincoln esports team. They continue to impress this year. And this is the 3rd year for esports within our district, and it's also the 3rd year participation in the Iowa High School Esports Association. The Abraham Lincoln esports team is coached by head coach Ryan Sinclair, who is with us tonight, and also assistant coach David Price, who is also with us tonight. Overall, the team placed 8th in the state finals this school year. And our team members are, we first have Caden Anderson. Caden was a newcomer from Avoca High School. He was nicknamed and is nicknamed the Secret Weapon, and he helped the team achieve a 6-1 record. Next, we have Andrew Atchley. Andrew is a returning player as a senior. He received the nickname Rambo, swinging the team to multiple match victories. The next student is not with us tonight, but his name is Wyatt Harvey, and Wyatt was also a returning player as a senior, and he contributed to the 6-1 record with both battle skills and comedic vocal impersonations. Next, we have Levi Kolb. Levi is a 12th grader and joined the team and helped the team fight their way to Marshalltown. The next member is not here, but his name is Tyler Laszlo. He's a freshman newcomer, and while new to the team, his skills proved otherwise in the heat of battle. Our next member, Dakota Muchler. Dakota is a veteran player. He came back as a junior, making key plays and sharing in the leadership role, which helped the team to many victories this year. So congratulations. And next we have from Abraham Lincoln High School and Thomas Jefferson High School, we have Olympic State bowling qualifiers. So tonight, we're going to honor and recognize our high school students who qualified for the Special Olympics State Bowling. These students earned first place in their age level at the Southwest Iowa Regional Special Olympic event, which qualified them for the state bowling event. The team is coached by Nicole Vetter, and the team performed exceptionally well at the state bowling event. So from Abraham Lincoln High School, we have Danny Mylenik, Danny is a 9th grade student, and she had a first place finish at state this year. The next student is not able to be here tonight, but it is Carly Sanders. And Carly is a 10th grade student who also had a first place finish at state. Aaron Wilson is here tonight. Aaron is an 11th grade student, and he had a second place finish at state. And now for our Thomas Jefferson High School state bowling qualifiers. We have Blake Cooper. Blake is a 9th grade student, and he had a first place finish at state. Bradley Donner. Bradley is a 9th grade student with a 5th place finish at state. Jamie Mastel. Jamie is a 12th grader, and she had a first place finish at state. Emily Morris. Emily is a 10th grader, and she had a 3rd place finish at state. LJ Ray. LJ is a 10th grader, and he had a 2nd place finish at state. And our last member is not able to be here today, but Tyler Ceramic is a 12th grader, and he had a 3rd place finish at state. Mr. Novotny, he is Abraham Lincoln's athletic director, and he is here tonight to join us for our esports bowlers.
And now I'm going to invite Mr. Milborn to the podium to do our staff recognition of the month. Mr. Milborn?
Thank you, Dr. Morello. I am pleased to introduce to you our November Employees of the Month. I'd like to also thank everyone who nominated individuals at the building and department level. We thank the Council Bluffs Schools Foundation for generously sponsoring our recognition program, which allows us to provide our Star Trophy as well as a dinner gift certificate from the foundation. So we will start with our licensed staff member of the month, which is Julie Frederick, our high school culinary arts teacher at Iowa Western. Julie, come on up. Julie, here's what your nominators shared. Julie's classroom is the epitome of our district's Diploma Plus One vision. For the past 3 months, she has not only brought industry relevance to our culinary arts program, she has fostered a great partnership with Iowa Western and has strategically grown her culinary arts program. Chef creates a student-centered classroom where real-world learning and student engagement is happening every single day. Julie has also embraced work-based learning in her classroom and beyond, from catering district events such as the CTE Business Advisory Council and the Principal Leadership Luncheons, which was delicious soup, by the way, that was very good, to working side by side with Iowa Western Culinary Arts students at their college fundraising events. Chef Julie Frederick implements our mission of making post-secondary education inescapable for all culinary students, and we are thankful to have her part as our D+1 team. Thank you. And Julie is supported here tonight by Kathy, our CTE coordinator as well. Congratulations, Julie. All right, next I'd like to introduce our support staff member of the month, which is Emily Sword from the infant room lead teacher at the Annie Nelson Learning Center.
My favorite room.
Dr. Morello could be seated there holding the babies, right? So Emily, this is what your nominator said. With our infant program being a new program in the district, we needed to find an individual who was eager to learn, who was flexible, and loved babies. Emily Sword is exactly that. She has created the most welcoming environment in which children can explore and families can see what their children have been working on. Emily thrives to build strong collaborative relationships with each family and is an asset to our building. We are so very lucky to have her at the Early Learning Center. And Emily is joined by her mother, her husband, and son here tonight as well. Congratulations, Emily. And Miss Mandy Sanders. Congratulations to both Julie and Emily. Thank you.
All right, well, that was fantastic. This is our favorite meeting of the month, just to let everybody know, just watching student success, that is exactly why we're here, and knowing that we have quality teachers and we recognize them. I mean, that's the reason that we're up here. So thank you again, everybody, and congratulations.
Yep, that's you too.
All right, next up on our agenda, we have Reflections on the 2023 Iowa Association of School Boards Annual Convention from our board. All of our board members were actually able to be there this year, and I would like to hear from each of you just maybe something you picked up, because there's always a something, how you liked it, and any other thoughts that you have. We just start at the end if you want. Yeah, go ahead.
It was a great team building, and it was so nice to get to know everybody individually in an environment that is where we're supposed to be. And it was nice to be encouraged, and it was super nice to hear from half of these speakers, especially the one that used to play guitar for Hanson. Just saying. But I enjoyed it.
So as a returning board member, which is so hard to believe, what is it, our third IASB? I think you finally get comfortable once you're like after your second. But it was my second year representing our board at the delegate assembly, and that is just a great learning experience for any board member. But it's nice to see how other board members across the state come together and we talk about, oh, you're experiencing this in your district, or, oh, we're not, but this is what we're doing, and then coming together and thinking about, okay, what's going on across the state, and what do we want to focus on legislatively, and, you know, benefit our staff, our students, and our community, and it's just a really great experience to go through. And it's broken up by AEA districts, so I got to sit with, it was Griswold, and I think it was also Riverside School District, and last year I was with Underwood, so it was really nice to get to know the districts around us as well. And like I said, kind of get that difference with rural to our, you know, city school district and vice versa. So it's just always a great opportunity. And that's something I really enjoyed, in addition to the speaker who played guitar for Hanson. That was pretty cool. And our other speaker about generations, that was probably like my big thing. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, Dr. Rosella, but that was like a really good one.
Yes. And it was just interesting. I love the generation speaker and getting to hear just how and what has shaped the generations and some of those different things. And it's like, oh, that's why I do that. Kind of, it even was like a little self-reflective. I really liked the second day. Was he the closing speaker? And I saw him the first day too, and he talked about really like the different types of leadership and adaptive and relational leadership. And I found him, very engaging and just a really neat guy. I put his book on my Christmas list. So, and the cookies, of course, the cookies.
I think the one thing that I continue to take away from the convention is the importance of board professional development, and how we've missed out on a lot these last couple of years, not being able to have our board have continuing education opportunities at our work sessions. So hopefully we'll be inspired to take on a little more professional development. Dr. Murillo has given us a lot of opportunities to look at regarding where we want to go as far as our professional development. I mean, we're on the school board. We expect our teachers and our paras and our students to be constantly learning, and it would be quite hypocritical if we didn't take that upon ourselves as well. So I'm looking forward to many more opportunities to get to know each and every one of you through our learning opportunities that will be coming your way.
Hard to follow that. I think some of the things that stood out, especially to me from our conference. I think I say this every year, but it still is it's always really nice when we get into school district finance, especially looking at all the different measures that we vote on, looking at, having to do warrants to check on all the expenditures that happen to the school district. And that class in school district finance is always really nice to see all of that come together, to get a lot of the whys behind, some of the funding silos is always interesting. The presentation on generational differences was, I think that's probably the thing that's like stuck in my head the most, in that there's been lots of moments that I'm like, oh yeah, there's another generational thing happening to me as a millennial. One of the smaller presentations that had a pretty strong impact on me as well had to do with just advocacy for our district, everyone in our district. It's not just our students, but also our staff, our teachers, our administrators, everyone. I think that was on the Toot Your Own Horn presentation with fuel leadership. And also a presentation from Osage Community Schools on integrating technology into their everyday K through 12 schools was, for me, that was the highlight of the conference for me. I just really enjoyed that. But yeah.
Okay, I wrote something down because I get nervous. The most valuable workshop for me was Finance 101. That was something that I needed to learn about, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really interesting. We learned about our district's unspent authorized budget ratio, and ours is close to 8%, and that fell right in where IASB wanted us to be, and that has been pretty stable for the last 3 fiscal years. So I thought that was a relief. I mean, I didn't doubt it, but I didn't know also. So I also really enjoyed Ravi, the guitarist from Hanson. I liked his presentation. I did get to chat with him afterwards, and kind of talked about how his parents really encouraged him to get into music. And something that he said during his presentation really stood out to me. He said, "School must not try to be everything for everyone, but must have something for everyone." And I thought that was really interesting.
Awesome. For me, it was, a deeper dive, like Mr. Peter was saying, into finance, echoing what Ms. Greiner said. Every page of our finance book showed our district good, great, like we were always in the green. We're always right where we're supposed to be. And I was pretty proud to say that, we've been doing a really good job at staying focused on making sure our unspent authority or our spending authority or whatever the crazy finance things that go on is all where it's supposed to be, and it's been pretty consistent. Being new to the presidency, Mr. Kozire and I took an extra class. It was conflict resolution with Mr. De La Cruz, and that was fantastic. Just getting some tips and tricks on just how to better run meetings and how to better manage any conflict that you had. So that was super nice. I agree with Dr. Zello and Ms. Hardeman. Team building was big. I think we had a really good time. There were some fun pictures that we got taken at the booth. And just getting to know each other, it was fantastic. Being so new on the board, and like Mr. Kozire said, we're even new to the board, the three of us, Patrick and Lauren, getting some time together to understand each other a little bit more. Mr. Kozire and I had a pretty good talk just walking back to the hotel and learned a lot about each other, and that does a lot to help cohesiveness with the board. So that was a big thing on me too. So overall, I really appreciate the district sending us and allowing us to make sure that we are there and learning to be a better board. So thank you to the district. And that brings us to student achievement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tripp. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Matthews to the podium. Tonight, she will be presenting on supporting our English language learners and the English language development. So, Dr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry, I was eager for this presentation and I tried to get up earlier, so I apologize. We would have missed all of the exciting things that just happened. I really do appreciate the opportunity. We haven't had a presentation on our English learner services and development programs in my short tenure, but I can't remember one in recent history, so I appreciate the opportunity tonight. This work aligns directly with strategic goals 1 and 4. When we look at approving academic achievement, we're really looking at that for all students. And I know a lot of times we look at that subgroup data to see how students are progressing on both their proficiency and their growth. So it's really important that we consider that in the context of our English learners and to see that they're making the growth that we would expect them to, and that they're progressing through that English acquisition, those English acquisition phases in a timely manner so that they can reach that proficiency. And then with goal 4 around ensuring each student is supported and connected, it really is important when we think about the context of English learners and especially newcomers. I'll share some data around the increase of newcomers we've had, that they're supported and connected in our schools and also within our school community. So this work directly aligns with those goals. I do want to start by sharing some key terms related to the presentation and our services tonight. We use a lot of acronyms in education in general, and especially for these services. So English learners, or ELs, as they will be referred to sometimes throughout this presentation, are those students really in that process of acquiring English proficiency, and they have a first language that is either one other than English or in addition to English. I mentioned before newcomers. Those are K-12 students who were born outside of the U.S. and they have arrived in our country in the last 3 years and they're still learning English. And then LEAP is another acronym. It stands for Language Instruction Education Program, and I'll talk a little bit more about our models for serving English learners later in the presentation through LEAP. And then we have 2 different levels of English learners that I wanted to share with you. The first is that intensive or emerging English learner, and that is a limited English proficient student who, even with additional support, is still not proficient under the state's English language proficiency standards. And those are measured by a diagnostic screener called ELPA 21, and I'll explain more about that assessment as well tonight. And then we have our intermediate or progressing English learners, and those still are those limited English proficient students who either with or without support are approaching being proficient under the state's English language proficiency standards as measured by the ELPA 21. So just a little bit difference in their levels as they're progressing through that proficiency towards acquiring English as a language. I wanted to share some enrollment data with you as well tonight. So the blue bars are showing the fall of 2019, and then progressing purple is fall of 2020, yellow is 2021, teal 2022, and pink 2023. And that first cluster is elementary, and then middle school and high school enrollment. And what I want you to notice here is we did see some drops, mostly around those COVID years. But in the recent history, especially in the last year or two, the numbers are really increasing. We have more than 60 additional ELs at the elementary level this year. Middle school has been relatively consistent, and then 20 additional this fall at the high school level compared to the same time last year. And that's just really important as we think about the services that we're providing with our existing staff. In addition to that, I wanted to pull out newcomer data specifically. So these students are included in the overall EL population as well, but I wanted to pull out those that are here new, within the last 3 years, new to our country. And again, last fall compared to this fall, you can see at each level we are nearly double the number of newcomers we are serving across the board. And I forgot to update my total. I had to update this slide today because we went from 60 elementary newcomers to 64 just yesterday, so that total should actually be 118. I apologize for that error. But again, just wanted to note those increases there for the services that we are providing. So you may be wondering how many different languages are represented by our student population. Jared, Mr. Tripp is already crossing off a question. Our English learners speak 24 different native languages. Spanish is the most widely represented, with about 86% of our ELs speaking Spanish as their first language. Second to that is Chuukese, and about 2% of our student population speak Chuukese as their native language. After that, it's about 1% or fewer for the others. So you can see that we are widely represented in the languages, and we do not have fluent translators and interpreters for all of these languages, only for Spanish to serve these students and families. So we use a service called Propio, which does allow for real-time interpretation or translation for us to be able to make sure that we're engaging with families and communicating with them appropriately. So to support our English learners, we do receive some additional funding from the federal government and from the state. So for our weighted funding, that is based on our EL enrollment. And again, you might remember I just mentioned those levels. The amount of funding we received is based on the level that the English learner services are being provided. So if a student is at that intensive level, we receive an additional 0.26 in weighted funding for that student to provide services, and then an additional 0.21% for that intermediate level. And we receive that funding for each English learner for up to 5 years, as long as they are still eligible for that. They wouldn't be eligible for that anymore. If they demonstrate proficiency, then they are exited from those services. We monitor, and they no longer receive that weighted funding because they're no longer receiving those services. In addition to that, we receive Title III funds, and that is in two different parts. We receive Title IIIA funds, and those are more generic, and then we receive Title III immigrant funds, which are more specific to supporting the newcomers that I referenced. And those, again, are based on that enrollment. They're distributed, again, general EL for Title IIIA, and then the immigrant funds, and they must be used to provide additional or supplemental services above and beyond what is required. So we can't use those funds to just hire an EL teacher because we're required to provide EL services. But we can use them if we're adding a bilingual liaison, because that's something above and beyond to support those students. So just thinking about that context. I'll also share with you an exciting way we're spending some of our immigrant funds this year that is new for the first time. As promised, I mentioned the ELPA 21 Dynamic Screener earlier. That is our state-approved English language proficiency placement assessment, and it is administered by ELL teachers who are trained annually to administer this assessment. It is computer-based, and it assesses students in 4 domains: for listening, reading, speaking, and writing. We administer this to all English learners, usually late winter or early spring, kind of depending on ISASP. We don't want them taking both assessments at the same time, so it will fall in the February window this year so that they can take ISASP in March. We also use it for any incoming kindergarten students or newly enrolled students. If their parents identify that they have a home language other than English, we administer that screener to see where they are on their English acquisition and get them into services if they're eligible for those. So it's kind of administered in 2 different ways. The reading and listening portions of the assessment are multiple choice, and then the speaking and the writing portions are sent in and scored on a rubric. So for speaking, they do a recording, and for writing, they submit a writing sample to be scored on a rubric. Each of those 4 domains is then scored on a 5-point scale from beginning, which is that dark blue on your left, all the way through to advanced, which is the dark purple. We also sometimes refer to those as levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What's important to note there is that students need to have all 4 domains in either the early advanced or the advanced, so that level 4 or level 5, to be considered proficient. Once that happens, then as I mentioned before, a student is exited from those EL services. We monitor their progress, and then if they maintain that proficiency, they are just part of the general group, the population. So sometimes when we talk about our subgroup data, that's where we look at proficiency doesn't always continue to increase, because once they reach that proficiency, they're no longer in that subgroup. That's why we really look at the growth that subgroup is making, and are they making that adequate growth. Something else that might really stand out to you here is the difference in the listening and speaking. Students are proficient at a much higher rate in those 2 domains than they are in reading and writing. And if you think about language acquisition, even thinking about young children as they're acquiring language, this is pretty consistent, that you learn to listen and you learn to speak before you learn to read and write. The same is true for English learners. So they typically develop those skills first, and then they're able to transfer those skills into the reading and writing for their academic development. This is our most recent data for those proficiency levels. So last year when we administered this in that late winter window, we had 81 students in that emerging level. And to be in the emerging level, that means all 4 of your domains are either in level 1 or level 2. So those beginning stages of acquisition. This is not surprising given the number of newcomers we have and the number of students who have not been receiving EL services for long. We know that actually to gain academic and content language, it takes 4 to 7 years is what the most recent research is showing. So 81 in that emerging stage seems pretty consistent. We have 370 in that progressing area, that's that middle. So consistently, they have at least 1 score below the 4, but at least 1 above the 2. So that's what that middle area is. And then, as I mentioned, 45 students were proficient. So in all 4 domains, they were at that level 4 or level 5. They've been exited from services for this year. So very pleased about that. We have many supports in place for our English learners, starting with our wonderful dedicated employees. We have an English language program lead who really works closely with the teachers on curriculum, on implementation. She can provide coaching feedback to teachers if needed. She does our required LAU report, the title funding, just managing a lot of that, and professional development. Our English learner instructional coach serves K-12 students and teachers, and she works really closely with both general education teachers as well as EL teachers, because these are all of our students. It's not just up to the EL teachers to teach and support them, and a lot of times our general education teachers appreciate that coaching on best practices and strategies to support ELs. We do have 10 elementary English language teachers, 4 middle school, 2 high school. We have 1 EL paraeducator, and then as I mentioned before, we do have a wonderful bilingual liaison who really helps mentor and support students, does a lot with family engagement and connecting families to community resources. We talked a little bit about LEAP when I was introducing you to key terms. We use 2 program models to deliver our instruction to English learners. The first is sheltered instruction, and this model is only used at our high school level, and it is really for students at that beginning to intermediate stage of proficiency who need additional content support. So in these classrooms, it's really fun. They use an instructional approach to make academic content in English more understandable. They rely heavily on physical activities, visual aids, and the environment to teach vocabulary for concept development in content areas so that students can access their content outside of just accessing language development. In addition to that, we have English as a Second Language, another acronym here, ESL, and this model is utilized in both our elementary and secondary settings, and it is a program of techniques, methodology, and curriculum designed to teach ELs the English language skills they'll need: listening, speaking, reading, writing, study skills, content, vocabulary. It's very comprehensive, really to help them be successful in their core classrooms outside of their EL services. That can be a pull-out model. At elementary, oftentimes it'll be a small group pull-out during a non-core instruction time, and it's previewing some content and vocabulary to help students be successful then in the core classroom. We do also use some co-teaching models where the EL teachers will push in to support within the classroom setting. With the Title III immigrant funds this year, I mentioned we were doing something new and exciting. You may have seen a recent news media publication on Time Kettle translation earbuds. We were featured in that story and how we're using those in our high school classrooms. So students will wear these earbuds and they have an iPad that allow for real-time instruction to be translated into students' native languages and allow for that two-way communication between the student and the teacher. They've been really powerful, really well received by students. We're getting great feedback, as well as the staff who feel more comfortable in being able to communicate. If you've ever used the apps on your phone, it's similar similar to that, but a little more progressive with the technology. They offer 40 different languages, 93 accents. So again, helps us especially with some of those languages where it's harder to find some translators and interpreters, but also for students who are sitting in a science classroom or a social studies classroom or a math classroom, they don't have that support of their EL teacher. They can hear the instruction in their native language and start to make connections with those concepts and with the language. So we're using these to support our newcomers, and they're getting this, again, this would be something that supplements what we're offering because it's in addition to the other EL services they would receive. I mentioned before our wonderful staff, so some of the additional supports they are providing. I talked about coaching support for our EL and general education teachers. In addition to that, our instructional coach has a little more flexibility with her schedule. So when we have newcomers at the elementary level, for example, imagine acclimating to a new country, a new school system. Sometimes they have different needs outside of just their EL services. So the coach goes in and really works with that student, with that teacher, offers another layer of support for them. I mentioned mentoring. Both our coach and our bilingual liaison are really wonderful mentors, especially to our newcomers. Again, that acclimation to a new place, a new setting, getting them connected to resources, to other students, to other families, just been really powerful there. They also both conduct home visits. Going out, making sure we're engaging families, making sure they have what they need. Again, those community resource connections. I just can't say enough great things about all of the work that our staff do to wrap their arms around supporting our English learners and continuing to seek new ways as we look at more numbers, newcomers, new languages, just offering a lot of different supports in a variety of ways. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I just had a few questions. The first one, just kind of a quick one. As far as the Time Kettle earbuds, it's a fantastic technology. Do we have enough of the subscription to Time Kettle and also the earbuds to cover all of our English language learners?
We are working on acquiring enough for all of our newcomers at the high school, and that's our kind of phase in. So that's our first stage right now.
Okay, that's what we're working on. Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting to see the progression that the students can make when they're from moving up to an intermediate level and eventually testing out. Now, after they prove proficient, if they take the test and they pass, is there an opportunity for them to possibly be reassessed if they move into back into class and they're struggling and maybe they didn't quite get part of writing or reading and we want them to go back in?
Yes, we can always rescreen students and work with that family to see if it would be appropriate to enter those EL services again.
Okay, that was the one thing I was kind of missing from there, but okay. Cool. Yeah. Actually, sorry. One more question. So, this group of English language learning worries me the most as far as with our open enrollment issues, because I feel like especially this service could be very different from district to district. Have there been any issues as far as students transferring from one district possibly to our district and trying to meet them where they are and connect with them so that way we can get them the resources they need?
I don't think we've had a lot of open enrollment requests for English learners, but I can verify that.
Okay. That's one thing I just especially would worry about. Yeah. Thanks.
So you're saying that after the 5 years, there's no funding whatsoever for a child who needs help? They're cut off?
Interestingly enough, tonight on the agenda, we are requesting spending authority. So for students who need support beyond that 5 years, we still provide that support. You're right, we don't get the weighted funding. We have to request spending authority.
Or they have to go back and be screened again? Right.
We provide the services if they're eligible for services even beyond the 5 years. We just don't receive weighted funding.
And it used to be just 3 years that we would receive funding.
What are we seeing as an average to go through all the way? I mean, if we're only getting weighted funding for 5 years and then we are pretty much eating that cost, how many more years do we normally see it takes for them to be proficient?
It varies student to student. I did pull some of that data to see what grade levels we were entering and exiting students. And just like in our regular classrooms without English learners, the level of gaining proficiency varies. I don't have an average for every student, but we've seen some where they start with us in preschool, they don't receive EL services until kindergarten, and then they're exiting in first grade. And a lot of times, the younger they are when they enroll with us and start, the sooner they exit. When they're entering later, it takes a little bit longer.
I know you mentioned about that we still are screening them, so I think of like a toddler, for example, who may come to our country. And then if we're talking about a 5-year timeline, and they've been home, say with mom, and they're not getting exposed to English, then how is that? Do they still get the 5-year?
We don't screen until kindergarten, so the EL services don't start until then because of that. Because when they enter as toddlers, as preschoolers, they're still
Well, I meant like
acquiring
if they hit our kindergarten and they've been home, so they've been in our country for a couple of years, then.
Yes. So that would only affect their status as a newcomer, but not as an English learner. So their first year of English learner services would start the year that they're screened and entered into services, which would be kindergarten in that scenario.
Okay.
Good question.
When you say that there are 10 elementary EL teachers, is that one at every school, or are there a few at certain ones?
It is not. We use a formula, so we look at the enrollment of English learners at each elementary school and the total enrollment, and then some buildings might have a 1.5 or a 1.75 FTE, and some buildings with a smaller population might have a 0.5 or a 0.25. So we have some shared staff there. Some receive, 2 full-time. So it's really based on the number, and that's flexible each year as students move in and out.
Thanks.
We had an opportunity to meet with 3 of our legislators at our work session, and one of our district goals is timely and adequate funding. With the weighting formula for the English learners, do the cost associated with educating those students align with what the weighting is given for those students? Or is there a big disconnect between how much money we get and how much money it takes to provide those services to those students?
So, Mr. Kozar, I'll take that, Dr. Matthews. For the weighted, and as you noticed, when Dr. Matthews put up that one formula, she showed you the different levels. And the 0.26, and there you go. So that's a weighted for those students in the 5-year window. What you'll see tonight is one of the board items is the limited English proficiency, the IEP. We can then calculate your service and the weighted, and we get it as a follow-up in the following year. So when you say adequate, they do try to fill in that gap. But timely, it comes in the rear. So it means that we provided services last year. You all are providing a board vote tonight for them to reimburse us or give us a spending authority for the money we spent last year. So I would say it would be nice to have it when we're using it, but at least we get to draw it down and bring it back in the rear. And that's really how we do our federal dollars. We do a
That's how we
drawdown
get our
of it.
funding for state.
There you go.
For
Yes.
all of our funding is based on last year's.
Yes.
From the board. Thank you, Dr. Matthews. And that brings us to our next presentation.
This is our last presentation, but this is going to be a good one because it's Mr. Hamilton is presenting this night, tonight on our strategic goal 4 update. And as you can tell, Mr. Tripp's voice is a little lower than normal, and Mr. Hamilton has been under the weather. So we're happy to have him back today, looking better than you've looked
Thank you.
yesterday. And
I feel better than I sound.
Bass Brothers. So, Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to do a high-level overview of what Goal 4 is for the district. Some of you who have been on the board have heard this many times, but I'll provide some data and then the strategies that we're using to reach our goals. So Goal 4 is to ensure that each student is supported and connected. You've heard it referenced by a few different people tonight, which is always great because I love the fact that we have only 4 goals. So when you have 4 goals, it's easy to remember and people use them. So I've stood up here many times and I've talked about how if students are engaged and connected at school, that they're able to achieve at higher level. They're more likely or less likely to miss school. But I really wanted to provide some data for that and look at like a national, some national research. So I was doing a little bit of research and everybody kept pointing me back to this CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey that was in 2021. So it's pretty recent when you look at students. They looked at over 17,000 high school students. And they looked at school connectedness in relationship to 7 different behaviors, at-risk behaviors, including use of drugs and alcohol, just being at school, mental health. And the fact is the study showed that school connectedness was associated with lower prevalence of every risk behavior. So of the 7 risk behaviors, if you were connected to school, you were a lower risk in all of those behaviors. To me, it can't be more than that. Like, we're looking at a holistic approach to helping kids reach their highest potential. So when we look at this, we have 4 different data points that I'll walk through with you, and I'll provide you some data. Number 1 is 100% of students will report that they have at least 1 caring adult at school. So when we talk about a caring adult, it doesn't have to be a teacher. It can be a custodian, it can be a paraprofessional, it can be a nutrition staff, it can be an administrator. I know when we ask kids, I always ask my own kids after they do the survey, like, well, who is your 1 caring adult? And I always give Mr. Novotny a hard time because I know he gets on kids. But like my son said, I know if I need anything at Abraham Lincoln High School, I can go to Mr. Novotny and he's going to help me. So that's the first data point that we use. The second data point is 85% of students will report that they like school. We would love for that to be 100%, but when we have the data that shows that 85% is a stretch goal for us. Previously, we have used the Panorama SEL survey with kids, and we asked these 2 additional questions each time we did it. We are no longer doing the Panorama survey just because some Iowa code regulations and requirements that we were going to have. We are still doing these 2 questions. We actually just finished on Friday, so the data that I'm going to share with you is preliminary, but we still are going to ask these 2 questions twice a year to our kids in grades 3 on up. So the third data point that we look at is 75% of secondary students will participate in extra co-curricular activities. Really, our measurement is our high school kids. When we talk about our extra and co-curricular activities, obviously athletics is one, but then band, HOSA, DECA, choir, and then we also include, because we have 21st century before and after school programming in all of our secondary buildings, we also include 21st century programming. So our goal is 75% of students. Again, we'd love it to be 100, but that's a goal. The last piece is we look at 80% of students will have an average daily attendance of at least 90%. National studies, you're going to hear the word chronic absenteeism. Chronic absenteeism is missing more than 10%. So we want 80% of our students to not be chronically absent from school. Okay, so we'll go over the data points. So the caring adult, again, this is preliminary data. We just finished the survey Friday. At our elementary level, this is fall 22-23 to the fall 23-24. You could see that we had 93% last year in our elementary level. We are reporting right at 95% at our elementary level now. And the big jump, and I have to kudos to our secondary buildings, 81% last year compared to 87% this school year. The nice part about this question and the question about whether you like school is we are taking the names of the students. So if we have students who report that they don't like school, or we have students who report that they don't have a caring adult, we know who they are, so we can provide resources to help make sure that they realize that they do have a caring adult and who that is, and just to work with the kids. So like I said, the next piece is students report that they like school. We saw a 3% increase from fall 2023 to 2022-23 to fall of 23-24, and just a slight dip in our secondary schools. Again, we're able to identify those kids and how they're doing it, so we never want to see a dip, but we'll just need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to remind kids how much they really love school before they enter the workforce, like the rest of us, right? So when we look at our extra and co-curricular activities, you will have a report. Usually it comes in July, but now they have a dead week in school, so it just kind of depends when the dead week is. Our activities director, Mr. Novotny and Mr. Peterson, will actually come and give you a very extensive report, and they'll give you a breakdown of every activity we have in the buildings. Our goal is to have 75% participate. At Abraham Lincoln from 21-22 to 22-23, it increased 3%, and at Thomas Jefferson from 21-22 to 22-23, it increased 4%. So again, 75% is a stretch goal, but we are going to get there. I'm going to tell you a few strategies that we're using to do it. I also asked our activities director, I said, I'm giving updated data on everything else. Do you have anything you can provide me? So we looked at our fall athletics participation, because fall athletics are done. I'm pleased to stand here and report that at Thomas Jefferson, we have seen a 10% increase in our fall athletic participation. And at Abraham Lincoln, while not 10%, it's still a 3% increase. So we're seeing numbers grow. Student attendance, again, this is chronic absenteeism. We would love it for it to be 100% of kids are in school every single day. The realistic goal for us when we started looking at this was 80%. You can see 21-22, we were sitting at 76.77%. Again, remember we were coming out of a pandemic, so really engaging kids was what we wanted to make sure we were doing. Last school year, it was 77.68%. And as of November 1st, because we pull this data monthly and provide it to our principals and our support teams within the buildings, as of November 1st, we are actually above our goal. We do see a trend that shows a little bit of a dip in the spring. I don't know if that's spring break. Maybe spring break is going to fix that this year, that we actually have a spring break. But we're doing a lot of work to make sure we reach that 80%. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about strategies that we are using. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Oh, it's probably mine. Don't worry about it. No, it's not. So some strategies that we use within the district. I like to brag this up because when the pandemic hit, everybody came out and said, oh, you need to work on being trauma-informed. You need to do all the things that we were in front of this. In the 1920 school year, we actually made an effort district-wide to become a trauma-informed school district. That was the year the pandemic hit. So all staff were trained in being trauma-informed. We continue through the efforts of Carrie Zimmer, who is our social emotional wellness coordinator. We continue to provide all staff when they're hired training in being trauma-informed. We use the Classroom 180 model, which is really setting your classroom up so kids feel safe, so kids feel comfortable, realizing that all kids come to us with different backgrounds, different things that have happened that affect them, and really setting them up to be, like I said, to be safe and to be helpful rather than look at consequences. The Trauma Informed Online Academy is one of the things up there. That was a tool that we were able to use to make sure we were consistent in what training all staff received, so we continue to use the Trauma Informed Online Academy. The next strategy that we use, and this is really coming out of our multi-tiered systems of support that we've been implementing the last few years, but positive behavior supports and intervention. You heard Mrs. Anderson say, the work we're doing with foundations and CHAMPS is beneficial. We know that it is. We've seen less referrals. We've seen kids, just like math and reading, kids come to us, different backgrounds, different experiences. They need help with behavior sometimes. So with math and reading, we're setting up behavior. It's the same way. We're reteaching, giving them some realistic consequences. We use Randy Sprick's Safe and Civil Schools. They're actually coming the next 2 days to train our teams. Foundations is our school-wide behavior management plan that gets voices from teachers and students to make whatever the guidelines are within the buildings. And then CHAMPS, or Discipline in Secondary Classrooms, is our elementary and high school models. Those are for your classroom expectations. So we have consistent school-wide and classroom expectations that should be used, that are, again, recognizing positive behavior, and really putting a twist on it that it's reteaching and setting kids up for success. Other strategies that we have worked on is we are in our third year of social emotional learning, and hard to believe that that's true. I've done presentations in the past about Move This World. Some of you will remember drink a glass of water, right? Nobody? Come on, Mr. Kozar, you don't remember?
Yeah.
Okay. Move This World is our elementary curriculum. It could be done daily at the elementary. Most of the time, we're seeing that it's done 2 to 3 days a week, 5 to 8 minute lessons that are online so everybody can access them. The cool thing about Move This World that we just started working with our counselors on this week is they're now providing some Tier 2 interventions. So as we see kids who maybe need a little extra help, we really are focusing on those Tier 2. Habitudes is our SEL curriculum, our social emotional learning curriculum for our secondary buildings. The difference between Move This World and Habitudes, Move This World is really setting kids up. How do you stay regulated? How do you, some techniques that you can use to stay regulated, where Habitudes is really, how do you be a leader? How do you work well in a group? It's just building upon those things that we've learned in Move This World. Habitudes comes to us as 13 different lessons per year. We've learned 13 lessons was not enough. So Carrie Zimmer, she's our rock star social emotional wellness coordinator. She's created lessons, a portfolio of lessons for schools to use to be able to go and handpick, like, okay, we need a lesson on being respectful. So she might have 5 or 6 different lessons in there. Again, the secondary levels are doing this in their advisory times. So she's created numerous lessons for schools to use, and the expectation is that they're doing an SEL lesson at least once a week at the secondary level. The next thing that I want to make sure that we recognize is the work that we've done with mental health. It's meeting the needs of kids, and when we say mental health, sometimes it has a horrible stigmatism to it, but really it's meeting the needs of kids and the work that we've done with it. We are one of the few districts that have our own therapists that we've hired. We have great community partners within this community that provide therapists to us at no cost to us for school-based therapy. But what we saw is we were restrained because of their own restrictions. They have to charge insurance. They have to do the things that they need to do to stay in business, right? We don't can't fault them for that. But what we saw with hiring our own therapists is we're able to open it up and do more creative things, such as groups, small groups, meeting more than once a week, meeting less than once a week. We're really able to refine it, to make it our own and to really meet the needs of kids. Again, we still have community partners that are within our building, but we have 7 full-time therapists that are out in our buildings. A question may come up on how they're assigned. Again, we look at just the facts of where the needs are. And one of the things that we did this year, and we talked about it at the last few board meetings, and a couple of the board members actually came to it, was Jackets Thrive event. That's something that I hope to build off of. We had never done anything like that before. We had 25 different people from the community come and who are willing to donate their time and energy to come and work with our students to really give them an entry-level chance at learning something, whether it's mindfulness or whether it's being around animals or whether it's music, whatever it is, again, to look at the holistic needs of kids. So that's something we're looking to scale and do. I'm hoping it becomes, at both of our high schools, an annual thing. My team is at home listening, saying, thanks a lot, Tim. So, other strategies that we've done is really just 2 things. We need to increase the awareness. It's important that kids come to school. We start at a very young age. We can chase and be reactive all we want, but really the proactive approaches. You can see that picture there is Jen Campbell, who is one of our amazing SOMs at Roosevelt Elementary. At Roosevelt, they just did random days in November. If you come to school, you get a token for a piece of tape. So just randomly, it didn't have to be perfect attendance, didn't have to be like you came, they got a token for a piece of tape. So at the end of the month, they gave out pieces of tape for how many tokens you had. So they taped Miss Campbell right there to the wall. You can see her feet are not touching anything. She is taped to the wall. And in 25 years of being in education, I had someone email me and ask me a question that I've never had before. And the person was from Georgia, so social media is out there. She said, she was assistant principal in Georgia, and she said, Tim, I saw this picture online, how much tape does it take? Because they wanted to replicate it. And so the answer is that's 10 rolls of duct tape to keep her to the wall there. So increasing your awareness, 21st Century is again up there. The cool thing about 21st Century is we're in all but 3 buildings this year. We're writing the grant, we're working on it now, it's due January 19th, to extend it to every single school that we have within the district. So we will, next year, have 21st Century club, before and after clubs in all of our buildings next school year. And the great part about that is, Ms. Greiner, I think you mentioned something about being connected to school somehow, right? Like, we can't, the quote you said was good.
Yeah.
So the quote you said was great, but the thing about it with 21st Century, it's finding the niche where kids fit in. Meeting them where they are. We can do clubs. We've had Harry Potter clubs, chess clubs, water polo clubs. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can do a club. If you have an interest, we'll find a teacher or someone to lead the club. And so we will make clubs available for all kids. And then when we talk about increased opportunities, how perfect that our AL esports team was here. The picture on the far right is our AL esports team at one of the competitions. Esports is in our 3rd year, and the number of kids, when we started this, and John Style and Dr. Merle and I sat down, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but the number of kids who participate in esports is amazing. Those are kids who, some of them were never connected to anything else before, but they take pride in it, and they have some state quality kids they're showing. And then the last one I want to talk about is our girls wrestling team. Girls wrestling is booming. Middle school, we last year had 1 middle school wrestler from Wilson on our girls wrestling team. This year we had 17 start. We had over 50, and Mr. Daniels would be so mad at me right now because I can't remember the exact number. I want to say it was 63. That was the exact number for girls wrestlings at middle school. Our high school numbers have increased tremendously. The 4 girls you see there were our state qualifiers last year at the first inaugural, the first ever girls wrestling of state wrestling sanctioned through the Iowa Girls Athletic Union. So with that, in my voice, I would love to answer any questions that you may have.
I have a couple questions. So the first one is, if you haven't mentioned it before, can you remind us on the elementary grades that you ask? Is it K through 5 that you ask all of them to have a caring adult, or is
We
it
asked
limited?
we thought about taking it a little lower, but we're doing 3 through 12 is the grades we're asking.
Okay. And then my second question is, have you noticed any associations from the TJ Thrive Day with maybe some increases in students noticing they have a caring adult or they like school more?
We should have, that's a great question. We should have asked them beforehand and after. I have not been in TJ a lot, probably about once a week since then. I'm going to spend Monday and Tuesday there. But I still have a lot of kids coming up and telling me about it. And, I think students and staff were a little hesitant because we'd never done anything like that. But I've had a lot of feedback that has said really good things about it. So, and we'll do it better next time. Like, we learned a lot this first time.
I just want to commend you on the Jack is Thrive Day. I know that Dr. Rosello and I both attended that, and I know I emailed you, but I just wanted to publicly say that I heard lots of really good things from students who attended the classes that I was in. Some had favorites that I never would have guessed were their favorites, and it was a really great event, and I've heard a lot of feedback that people would want it in both schools. So I know that you mentioned that, and to me, it was a great success.
Yeah, thank you. I can't take all the credit. Like I said, we have a strong, I'll be honest, we have the best department within the district in student family services. So we have a strong team, and truly our people within the community who are willing to support our kids, we couldn't do without them.
I want to echo what Angela said, it was an amazing day. I hope they I was just awed. I hope they took as much away from it as I did, because I thought it was just a great way to reach out to the kids. I did have a question on the clubs specifically. Do we ever pull the kids, when I think of the extracurriculars, because I know you talked about 21st century Greek, on things that may draw them in that we don't currently offer?
We do try to reach out to our kids because we do have the ability, we are tracking, so we know, again, who are the kids who are participating and who aren't. I know Mr. Novotny, and I've kind of let that work with both schools. I know they have done some polling within those kids who aren't participating to find out, but nothing official. We're not doing anything official.
Thank you.
I just had a brief question. When you were talking about the content for social emotional learning, you mentioned Habitudes. There was only 13 modules. And first off, kudos to our SEL coordinator for putting together enough additional material to go with that. With that said, do you foresee that we might possibly have to look for something else that is more sufficient, or do you think that what we currently have, the 13 lessons plus what we already put together, is sufficient?
Yeah, another great question. We actually pulled in people from all of our secondary buildings last school year because that was a concern for me. And the consensus from them was that the lessons that we were doing with Habitudes were really, really good. So they didn't want to go away from Habitudes.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually chose, because I was willing to look at doing something different, because when we did it, we were brand new to it, and Dr. Murillo is, we're not going to sit around and do something that isn't effective. But the schools really, really liked Habitudes, so they chose to go the route of using Habitudes and then being able to choose maybe lessons more refined for their buildings.
Good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Murillo. That brings us to the exciting section of our meeting, which is the resolutions. First resolution is in regards to open enrollment, out, not on prior year's head count.
I move that the district administration authorized to submit a request to the School Budget Review Committee, SBRC, for the modified supplemental amount of $1,376,985 for open enrolled out students who were not included in the district's previous year certified enrollment count.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Could we possibly talk through this a little bit? I mean, I'm very curious to find out this modified supplemental amount, if it's been drastically different with the removal of our open enrollment restrictions.
Yeah, the wording is a little.
It's
how
weird.
how it's worded, and
Yeah.
the state words this. Really, this is the open enrollment in after the count. So that's what it is. And it does take into that, it's an increased enrollment. It's open enrollment that we receive from students that weren't there on that October 1st date. And then it does take into account kids going in and out, that swing in door kind of.
Okay.
And it does also put in some weighted, because some of the students come in, they could be ELL, they could have different services needs, so that also includes that. In looking back prior years, as I pulled up the board items just to see the difference, we usually ask about 1.25. This is 1.3 and change.
okay.
So it's right around in that same area.
Okay.
So it's not anything drastically different. So this will be money in that we get authority for.
Okay, that was my next question. I wasn't sure if it was actual cash or if it was additional authority.
It's authority.
It is authority. Okay.
Authority that we can spend.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Ms. Hardiman?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes. And the motion carries. Next, we have resolution for limited English proficient instruction beyond 5 years, modified supplemental amount request. Is there a motion?
I'll move for the limited English proficient instruction beyond 5 years to be authorized for English language learning programs for students who have exceeded 5 years of waiting that are included in the fall 2023 certified enrollment headcount as presented.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this resolution? As there is none. Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes, and the motion carries. Next, we have a resolution for the Bloomer PA and Bell system. Is there a motion?
I can move that the board approves the purchase of the Rollin Telecenter U intercom system from the Electric Sound for $35,800 for Bloomer Elementary School.
I will second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Nope. Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes, and the motion carries. Next up, we have approval of the BCDM Architects Professional Services for the TJ High School structural settlement repairs. Is there a motion?
I'll move for the approval of BCDM Architects Professional Services for the TJ High School structural settlement in the amount of $20,484.64 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion regarding the TJ structural settlement repairs?
So this is for what they've already assessed. This isn't for the rest of the cost of the project. Yeah.
And specifically, what method of funding are we using on that? Is that through the SAVE funding? Okay.
Okay, Ms. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kozire?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes, and the motion carries. Last in our resolutions is carpet replacement for the TJ High School Counseling Center, band, and orchestra rooms. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve giving Flores Commercial Incorporated $44,148 to replace the carpet in the TJ High School Counseling Center, band room, and the orchestra room.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this?
More comment that as a former band nerd, I can attest that carpet replacement is always in dire need. I think almost every band room I've ever been in my life, the carpets just always need to be replaced. It's always needed.
Was the choir room included in the motion? Because there's a choir underneath of it was included in the quote, but I don't see it in the action. So I just want to clarify.
That is correct.
That is because the choir and the band share the same room
Ah.
at Thomas Jefferson. And if I might take a moment, one thing I really appreciate, since Mr. Stiles has taken over facilities, and we are updating the master facilities plan, and one thing that he has been able to do is really walk the buildings with our director, and this was something that he said was just in dire need. And just to have someone over our facilities that has eyes on our building and knows of a standard that he's moving the facilities department so that our students and our staff have a learning environment that is clean and well-kept and up to a certain standard that we would want. I really appreciate that, and I think we'll start to see more of this. This was some of the areas that John said this needs to be addressed. It's not acceptable. So I appreciate the work, and we're getting really close on this updated facility plan. So I'm super excited about that.
So will we be updating then the replacement cycle that we're looking at? I mean, so that when we start, saying, hey, after 5 years, we need to at least take a visit again to assess the standard?
Yes. The first book that we published was 2020, and so we're in 2023. And because of ESSER, we really moved through some of the critical needs. And so what we're looking at now that John has really started focusing on is some things, because since we moved to middle school, high school, and we've done some upgrades in those areas, now we need to go back and look at our painting and our carpet and all of that in our elementary schools to ensure, if we could ever get off the wheel of concrete, eating our money up. And now that we're getting our roofs and the work done at College View, and then we'll do some work at Carter Lake also. I think we can really start to get a good cycle on our furniture in schools, painting, carpeting, and ensuring that our bathrooms and those type of things have been all upgraded.
Any further discussion? Nope. Ms. Ostrowski?
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kozier?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Dr. Rosello?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes, and the motion carries. And that brings us to our consent agenda. The board would gratefully acknowledges and accepts the donation of $750 from the Knights of Columbus. As always, thank you. Approval of Air Force JROTC Crosstown Agreements, Educational Cooperative Construction Agreement for TradeWorks, Special Education through Glenwood, Southwest Iowa Apex, Special Ed Contract with Sioux City, Personnel Agenda and Disbursements. Is there a motion?
I'll move for the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda? None. Mrs. Ostrowski, please call the roll.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Dr. Rosella?
Yes.
Ms. Hardeman?
Yes.
Ms. Greiner?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Kozier?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes. And the consent agenda. And that closes our meeting. We are adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Tripp. Even though you weren't quite feeling well?
I'll get better.
Yeah, oh, you did good. There you go. I know, well, I got confused on the staff student when I saw Tracy walking my way.